care to move that the House takes note of miscellaneous business?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Bill
Mr Speaker, I never thought I would say this, but I'm missing Russell Norman. Russell Norman, long gone to run Greenpeace, was a moderate, sane, predictable economic voice in this House. And doesn't everyone wish he was back? Because look what's happening to the voice of the opposition without the moderate, thoughtful and considered views of Russell Norman. What is happening? Well, Mr Speaker, we're seeing the Labor Party's traditional reputation, crafted with real effort by some admirably smart people over the last 20 or 30 years, as a moderate, predictable political party who in government might have some concern for the incomes and assets of Middle New Zealand, who might behave in a way that was kind of predictable. But that's all unravelling. The obvious one, free trade. That's obvious. Dispensing with 30 years of multi-party support for free trade agreements, and arguably the party that negotiated the biggest and best free trade agreement with China, which they are no longer proud of, either the agreement or the Chinese for that matter. And Mr Speaker, that's free trade. Well, you could kind of accept that, but interest rates, politicians stiff-arming banks and setting interest rates. New Zealand has tried this before. And in fact, not only has it tried it before, it was the world leader in making sure it didn't keep happening. Here's a simple question for the Leader of the Opposition. If the Reserve Bank increases the OCR, which might happen one day, would the Labor Party legislate for banks to pass that on to mortgage holders? Well, you know, much as we all try to be rational politicians who take into account the longer view and all the facts, we know the answer to that question. Of course he wouldn't. Politicians will only ever stiff-arm and legislate to get interest rates down. We tried that before. It almost wrecked the New Zealand economy. So what's going on in the Labor Party? Have they forgotten New Zealand's economic history? Well, maybe they should consult Russell Norman. But I tell you, they seem to be consulting the Twitter sphere that follows around Bernie Sanders and Mr Corbyn. They seem to think that they're in economies that are stuffed. They seem to think they're in economies where there's mass disillusionment, where middle class incomes have been dropping, where unemployment is high, and where public debt is huge. Well, you could argue that is the case in some economies where there's now rampant left-wing populism, but it's not New Zealand. It's not New Zealand. So where Russell at least was trying to save the planet, Labor's on another planet, and it's not the same one. That is, they're following policies that are coming from rampant left-wing populists in economies with characteristics nothing like ours. Now, but the worst of it, of course, is that they think the New Zealand public don't know it's cheap, short-term politics. And if the problem for Labor was lack of trust in their ability to run an economy 2 weeks ago, well, it's got a lot worse. because we have in the House a major party that wants to relive the nightmares of the 80s and early 90s, where all this was tried, it all failed, the pain was dreadful, and Grant Robertson wants to go there again.